and
Thank you.
I ask to Ines Moran to make
Mm.
her presentation. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
It's okay. It's okay. Go on.
Can you see my slides? Is everything, can you see my slides or?
Yeah, it's okay. Go on.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll start then. So hi, my name, buongiorno. My name is Ines Moran and I'm a PhD researcher at the University of Auckland. And I'll talk to you about individual vocal signature recognition using machine learning algorithm in a New Zealand bird, the titipunamu, also known as rifleman. So before I start the bulk of my...
Sorry, we see the comments as well.
Oh.
You need to put it full screen.
Okay, wait. How about now?
Now it's perfect.
Okay. Let's see, 2 seconds. I just have to do one thing. Okay. All right, never mind. Okay, so yes. So I was saying before I start my my talk, I'd like to acknowledge the people that welcomed us in our research station, and this place is called Mangaharuru, and it's also known as the mountain that rumbles and roars. And this is a name given by the hapu of that place. These are sub-tribes, Maori sub-tribes. And so in that place, the Department of Conservation, in partnership with the hapu of that region, conserve beautiful place, this beautiful place. And the reason why this place is called the mountain that rumbles and roars is because it used to have many different species of birds, and so hence the name. But it's also a place where you can find lots of endemic species of plants as well. So animal communication in many ways, animals altogether communicate in many ways. So either through visual communication with patterns and colors, but as well as with sense and chemical communication, such as lots of big cats use scent trails, and ants use pheromone trails to navigate. But a lot of animals, as we know, use acoustic communication. But so you can imagine that in very complex groups where many types of interactions occur, knowing who is who matters. And so having a unique individual acoustic or visual or chemical signature can help animals navigate their social interactions. And so using these unique signatures helps remembering whom you're interacting with and recognize mates and offsprings, which is quite an important ability to have. And so these are just social networks and showing all the interactions that animals can have within their complex social groups. And something that I'd like to highlight is that these signatures that animals use can be visual, and this is a nice example of Elizabeth Tibbets that have found that wasps have unique facial patterns and that they use them to recognize individuals within their groups. And so unique signatures can help differentiate individuals apart. It can help localize individuals. It can also help form alliances, mates, friends, or avoid certain territorial competitors or other individuals. So now I'd like you to close your eyes, imagine that you're watching a beautiful sky filled with stars, and out of nowhere, you hear this voice.
Antarctic minke whales. Their pointed heads and short dorsal fins Give them speed and endurance.
So for some of you who are quite fond of Sir David Attenborough, you'd probably have recognized his voice. And so that's what I'll be talking to you about, vocal signatures in animals. And so what's quite neat about them is that they have a innate component associated to them, but they can also be associated to, they can also have a learned component, and they can be influenced by social, their social environment. And so many animals use unique, have unique voices, as I said. And just for fun, I'm going to make you listen to different individuals of sheep, and hopefully you can hear the difference between individuals. Oops. I'm going to play that again. And so unique vocal signatures, signatures have innate components to them. And so this is quite well documented, where larger animals such as elephants usually have produce very low frequency sounds, and animals that are tinier, like bats, for example, have a higher pitched fundamental frequency. And so this also is true within a species. Individuals that are bigger will sound lower, and individuals that are smaller will sound higher pitched, usually. But there is also, they can also be learned components of vocal signatures. And so then interesting questions can be asked, such as, can animals modify their vocal signatures? And if they do so, can they learn how to modify these vocalizations? And so on Earth, currently, there are 8 groups of animals that are that can learn their vocal signatures. And that includes three groups of birds: hummingbirds, songbirds, parrots, dolphins, humans, bats, elephants, and seals. But a lot of other groups have never been tested, and so that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area of research. But before I continue, and I'd like to ask this question. So we know that a lot of animals have these vocal signatures. So why should we care about them, really? And one thing that we all probably know in this conference is that bioacoustic soundscape monitoring has exploded in the past few years. And so there are billions of terabytes of recording out there. And as many of you probably know, there's a challenge, lots of challenges with that. And one of the, often people ask this question: how many species are there within these recordings? And that's kind of a species vocal signature. But not too many studies look at how many individuals are there within that, within those recordings. And that's when individual vocal signature comes at play. And as well as, can machine learning help with detecting all these individual vocal signatures? And that's what we've aimed in our project to do. And so we decided to use a titipunamo. That's the smallest bird species in New Zealand. They're about 5 to 7 grams, so quite tiny. And so we wanted to explore 2 things. Do titipunamo have vocal signatures? Because their vocal behavior isn't well known, and it's considered entirely innate, so genetically determined. And the second thing is that we wanted to investigate with them is that to detect any forms of vocal learning in this species. And the reason why we picked this species in particular is that because titipunamo actually share a common ancestor with vocal learners such as parrots and songbirds. So, first question we asked is, do titipunamo have individual vocal signatures? The second question we ask is, do titipunamo have a group vocal signature? When they are within a same group, do they sound more similar? And if so, what can this tell us about their vocal learning abilities? And the machine learning aspect of this project was that can Titipunamu signatures be accurately classified to the right individual and group? And so we collaborated with e-research from the University of Auckland to do that. And so a little bit about our methods. So we went to the Mangaharuru mountain ranges, and we captured Titipunamu, and we put a little pitag band on their legs and an RFID reader that could read that pitag and then ID the bird that comes in and out of nests. And we also placed microphones outside the nest. And so Titipunamu produced these feeding calls right before entering the nest and right before feeding their little babies, their nestlings. And this is how it looks like in the video. That's a female coming in the nest, feeding them, taking a fecal sac and leaving. So then we had to do a lot of time offset corrections because the RFID and the microphone weren't fully synced, and there was a little bit of drift with the time, with clock. So that took a little bit of time to code. Then we extracted the extracted calls, the feeding calls of the Titipunamu, and we matched the IDs from the RFID. Then we we tried to detect any vocal signature, and we used multidimensional scaling analysis, so MDS. And then we we calculated male frequency spectral coefficient, known as MFCC. We randomized the order of timeframes, and we trained our random forest classifier. And then we estimated the accuracy of random forest classifier. And so I'd like you to pay attention to the spectrograms here. Each box is an individual. And so I hope you can see that individuals just visually have a vocal signature. But to test this and make sure that what we see is correct, we conducted MDS and a Permanova test. And indeed, it was quite significant. Something else that I should mention is that we conducted this research with 13 individuals and recorded about 7,000 feeding calls. Then with all these vocal signatures, we asked our random forest classifier whether it could accurately classify these calls to the right individual as well as to the right nest. And it performed quite well, actually, at 84% for the individuals and 86% for the nests. And so now the cool thing about this is that we can answer questions such as who is calling and when in our recordings, as well as how many individuals are there in the unlabeled recordings, of course. And so this is a slide about the learned components of the vocalizations. And so if you pay a little bit of attention to these individual vocal signatures, you can see that there's a little bit of variation and plasticity, it seems, within these signatures. So the next question was, do they modulate them? Do they learn them? And so one way to look at this is we looked at how individual within a nest sound like, and we conducted MDS, and we saw that individuals within a nest, so two parents, adults, sound more similar than between nests. So this is quite intriguing for us. Is it a learned behavior or not? And so this is a question we are working on to answer with some genetic work that we have conducted. And so trying to tease apart the innate components of these feeding calls as well as the learned components of these feeding calls. So in conclusion, we found out that Titipunamu have individual vocal signatures and that they have nest vocal signatures. And now we have nice tools to process our unlabeled recordings with machine learning, thanks to machine learning. So for future investigation, it'd be nice to determine how many titipunamus are there in our recordings, and also document more the vocal plasticity of these titipunamu. So this research opens a nice window into the world, the vocal behaviors of these species using machine learning, which is quite neat, I think. With that, I'd like to thank all our team, supervisors, co-authors, volunteers, lab member, and sources of fundings. And also I'd like to thank the Acoustic Congress for organizing this great event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ines, for this nice presentation, indeed. And I open for questions. Questions from anyone. Waiting for other questions. I'm really interested in your approach. And do you believe that the plasticity demonstrated by these species is the results of the adaptation of individual in this time, or is something older? So I mean that plasticity means plasticity of the species or plasticity of individual.
Mm-hmm. So that's something we're not entirely sure like why they actually are doing this. But so in our other project where we used SNPs to find out how related individuals are, we found out that the social environment of these birds do have a lot of influence on the acoustic parameters of these calls. So and we also found that unrelated individuals do sound more similar. So social proximity and social similarity within a group seems to shape those calls. But whether this is actually innate or not, we haven't really fully answered that question yet. Yeah, but that plasticity is very interesting. Yeah, within an individual. It's,
I'm sure that the acoustic habitat hypothesis presented by Tim Moulet some years ago is exactly the same. Is in the same part of this story. It's part of the story. So I think that the movements of animals due to climate changes or human intrusion during their life can modify the acoustic performance of the individuals and change according to the community in which they are or where we will be in the future and if they move. Yeah. And this could be very interesting also for migratory birds that are different acoustic habitats during their life. This is another story, of course, but it's opening a giant narrative in this field. Yes.